This is Growing Pains and Pleasures with Julia. Firstly, I'd like to apologize that there wasn't an episode last week. I freaked out in simplest terms because I have a few topics written down on what I want to talk about, like the first things I want to talk about in the podcast, and it was this topic's turn, and I think I just let everything play out in my head before I started talking about it. I got scared, mostly because it's something that I'm still going through, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. So I was nervous to say, am I ready to open up in this sense to people? Am I ready to start talking about this with people? But it's also something that I didn't want to leave out because it has also played a pivotal role in the making of this podcast and also in my outlook on life. So it's something that has such a huge impact in my day-to-day life that it felt it was going to feel incomplete if I didn't talk about it, So based on that, today's topic is mental health. And I think we have seen throughout the first few episodes that I'm someone who overthinks a lot of things, and I tend to analyze and overanalyze everything. So it would make sense that, especially with this topic, it freaked me out to say, are you sure? Do you want to involve it? Do you want to include it? So yeah, let's get to it. I'm someone who associates themselves with the term anxiety. But I consider myself to be an anxious person based on the definition of what anxiety is. I'm not clinically diagnosed, but I have realized the patterns in my life and certain characteristics that would classify me as an anxious person. And anxiety, by definition, is a complex emotional state characterized by feelings of worry, nervous, and fear that are persistent and overwhelming. It's a normal human emotion that everyone experiences at some point, but for some, it can become a debilitating condition that interferes with daily life. Now, the characteristics of an anxious person include excessive worry, fear or apprehension, avoidance behaviors, and this is avoiding situations or activities due to fear or anxiety, and physical symptoms, which are rapid heartbeat, sweating, trembling, or shortness of breath. And especially here with the physical symptoms, I experienced this a lot. After high school, I started getting what I believe would be panic attacks or anxiety attacks, and I would start having these heart palpitations and the trembling and the shortness of breath, and we couldn't find a cure, I guess, or something to help me manage these things. So they became rapid, like it used to happen very frequently. And because at the time I wasn't well educated on what mental health issues are and what panic attacks are, we just thought like it's a thing with my mom. So every time I got a panic attack, my mom would give me cold water and it would calm me down. And then again it would happen, and then it would happen. So we just kept drinking the cold water and then I'd come down. And then it wasn't until recently where I started going to therapy that I learned that those were panic attacks. And at the time they seemed to spawn out of nowhere. Like I'd be chilling and then randomly I get a panic attack. Now I have an anxiety attack. It's like, oh, I can't breathe. What's happening, So with therapy, I got to understand what it is that I was going through. Speaking of therapy, I started therapy as a means to help me process my mom's passing. And it's in my first few sessions of therapy that I realized that there's a lot going on. It's not just grief, but there's also other elements that contribute to feeling how I've been feeling. So that's when I started doing some work on myself, and then I got introduced to a whole new world of mental health, and that's when I was like, oh, so this is what it was. Oh, this is what it was. And then everything just sort of came up into a ball, and I got a clear sense of understanding of the things that I was going through. Because at some point it got frustrating for me, because I'm like, why am I feeling like this? Nothing happened. I'm literally sitting on a couch. Why can I not breathe now? Why am I suddenly feeling like this? Where's the shortness of breath coming from? But and then I started also that, because that frustrated me so much, I started feeling weird. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just a weirdo, and I started slowly pulling away from people so that people don't experience my weirdness. And I built myself a little cocoon and I became a homebody. And I'm always in the house and I have like a few friends, a few people that I talked to. But it became lonely also because now I'm like, but what is wrong with me? So with therapy, I got to explore this world of mental health, and I'm like, oh, okay, this happens because of this and this happens because of this. I went for wellness counselling and we talked about such things. That's when I realized that okay, it makes sense. It makes sense that going out for me feels like a chore. It makes sense that when I'm in social settings I feel like an impending sense of doom, and I think it's normal for everyone to feel like, oh, what if I fall, But for me, it's the kind of fear that makes me not want to be there at all. It feels like if I were to go out and fall in front of a crowd of people, that is the end of me. There's no coming back from that. Like, Jules, pack your bags, leave, go start your life in another place. So it's very overwhelming, especially in professional settings as well, because now I'm at work and I'm expected to do certain tasks, but because I'm an anxious person, everything feels 10 times worse and it affects my performance at work. Sometimes I don't want to engage with people because I feel like I'm already judging myself in my head, and it's like, oh, is what am I going to say going to come out well? Am I going to be able to express myself well? So let me just keep quiet. And then I start living in the shadows of people. It's like now I don't want to voice myself out, and I don't want to be that person who grabs attention. But in the back of my head also, it's like, oh, this can't be my life, because I'm such an opinionated person and I consider myself to be very smart. So now I can't even articulate myself because I'm scared, So it made the day-to-day living of things very difficult for me. And at that time I was very fortunate to have had a mom like mine, where I could talk to her about everything. I literally couldn't wait for the time in a day where now it's the end of the day and I get home, and then I sit with my mom and then we talk about my days, because that's the one person who made me feel safe, who I didn't feel like is a threat, or I didn't feel like I need to act a certain way. She was just very welcoming and warm, and I could just get home and then be like, dude, this is what happened today. I had an idea and I couldn't even articulate it, and so it was just very hard. And it also affects my relationships, whether platonic or romantic, with people, because now I'm here and I'm out here over analyzing any and everything that a person does. It kind of limits the relationship and its potential, because now I'm going to avoid being intimate because it gives me anxiety. Not intimate in a sexual way, but like intimate in terms of opening up to someone and trusting them and believing that this could be something beautiful. I always have a wall of avoidance and fear that separates me from people. I'm always scared of having difficult conversations with people because the thought alone it's making me anxious, it's making me nervous. So I'd rather avoid such conversations, and it just hinders relationships and it makes things so awkward because like, why aren't you saying anything, and why do you run away from difficult conversations? So are you telling me you'd rather break up with me than we talk and sit this out and try to work things out? So that has been my life and my pattern, especially in romantic relationships. I've had issues with trying to relate with people and trying to open up with people because at the back of my head I'm like, this person is gonna hurt the crap out of me, and that's also one of the things that I explored in therapy. I realized that my attachment style is fearful avoidant. So on top of the anxiousness, there's also fear and avoidance. So you can just imagine the kind of relationships I had with people, because this is me. I believe that I'm such a lover girl and I am willing to try and be in a relationship with someone. But when the time comes where now we have to be intimate and open up to each other's feelings, I'm like, nope, I don't want this. I crave the intimacy and the commitment, but it also scares me. So there's just always a push and pull with relationships and in friendships as well. That's what I've realized, that with people, the moment people get too close, it's like, oh, this person is in my comfort zone, I need to push them out, I need to find a way, and then I run away from people because it just feels like it's too much. That's basically my life with anxiety, and it's not nice. It's really not nice. People think, oh, it's so cool because you can always stay in the house. Like, I crave being outside and being in social settings. I also want to have friends, like a lot of friends, so that we do cool stuff with. But even the thought of initiating a conversation that can lead to friendship is so scary for me. And I don't think I've realized it before more than I'm realizing now, that I actually said that my life is quite lonely because I don't have like friends. You know, it's scary and it's sad. No, but it's something that I'm also learning to work my way out. I'm learning how to go out once in a while and put myself in these awkward situations and try to come out triumphant out of them, to say I'm not going to let anxiety consume me. I'm not going to be in the house and worry every time. I need to push myself into being outside and being around people so that I can try to at least beat the anxiety, because it's not a nice place to be in. It's not nice to always constantly be worrying about stuff that normal people wouldn't even worry about. You know, it's not nice to having a whole entire emotional breakdown because I have to go to the mall and buy myself outfits. It's a very crappy feeling, you know. So because sometimes I even wonder to say, dude, what's the worst that could happen? You just go into the mall, you just go into the shop, what's the worst that could happen? But in my head, in that moment, I'm like, I can't, I just want to be inside. And you know, so it's been hard to navigate anxiety, especially looking back at the kind of negative impact it had on my friendships. I think I've lost quite a few good people in my life because of my inability to let people in and to avoid things and always be fearful. I've lost a lot of good people. But with where I am now that I'm able to identify it, and now that I'm able to see what my triggers are, and now that I'm able to know and tell and differentiate whether this is real danger or this is just something that's being conceived in my head as dangerous, I'm now learning to step out of that shell and initiate conversations and be in social spaces without having my headphones on or looking at my phone the whole time. Now I'm learning to put myself out there and to actually try and live in the moment also, you know, to say, this is what's happening now. Now I'm in a group of people and we are having fun. Let's not try to create or construct a danger. You know, let's just be here. Let's not analyze everything. Let's not analyze people's tones. Let's not analyze how people are looking at you. Just be in the moment. Allow yourself to feel what you are feeling right now. And it's nice. When I'm not anxious, I'm actually enjoying stuff and it feels nice until it comes back. But now we are learning also to see the patterns, to manage the triggers, and to be at a place where it's not scary to be outside. So slowly but surely we are getting there, and I've learned that also management and treatment of anxiety can be therapy or wellness counseling. There's also medication and self-care. But now I was scared of starting medication because one of my counselors suggested that I see a psychologist, and I was like, but am I ready for that step also, to be reliant on medication in order to calm myself? Won't that lead to addiction, where now I feel like I can't do anything without taking the med? So I'd advise people who might associate themselves with anxiety to start with counseling first and see how that leads, because counseling has some pretty good techniques on how to ground yourself also when you're having these panic attacks, you know. So it's been a journey with anxiety. It's been a journey, and there's a lot of opportunities also that I've let pass me by because of my anxiety. Sometimes a simple task is having to go out at a certain place to go drop out my CV. It's like, oh, the line is going to be long. The admin of getting there, what are the chances that I'm going to get picked? And then it becomes a whole conversation in my head, and I just lived out that whole thing without having done anything about it while I'm in the house, you know. So it's not a nice place to be at. It's not a cool situation to be living in. And it's so sad now because we've introduced these terms into our everyday language. I don't know if it's because of pop culture or what. People's like, oh my gosh, I'm anxious, and it's being used loosely, so that when you come and you experience it every day, you experience the anxiety every day, no one takes you seriously because of how common it's been used in everyday vocabulary. You know, the seriousness and the weight of these terms have been reduced because now it's an everyday term. You know what we learn every day. You know, it's not gonna be, because now I think, especially in the Black community, we are being introduced to these things now, and people are still learning. We're still learning the characteristics. We're still learning that not everyone can be depressed. Yes, you can be sad for periods of time, but it takes a certain characteristic to be depressed that no one can be. Not everyone can have these mental health issues the way we speak about them. That's why it's important to also include the element of being diagnosed first, you know. And yeah, that's just me with my undiagnosed anxiety. And there's also another thing that I struggle with, and that is suicide ideation. I think this has been a problem, I guess, in my life for quite some time. Since 2017, that's when it got intense, because at first it was just me thinking about dying. It's like, oh, I want to die, you know. And then in 2017, because now I'm home and I had all this time in the world, and I had people come and say stuff to me, and people are voicing out their expectations, and life just became very too much-ish for me, to a point where now I was like, you know what, let me start finding a relief from the pain that I'm feeling. And then I started cutting myself. I used to self-harm, and then I'd take a razor and then I'd cut my arm, and then find an outlet for these emotions that I was feeling that were very overwhelming. And my mom found out, and she gave me a whole lecture about it. So now I had to find another outlet. That's when I started thinking about suicide, you know. And suicide ideation, by definition, refers to thinking about or considering suicide. It can range from fleeting thoughts to detailed plans. Suicide ideation is a serious symptom that can be associated with various mental health conditions such as depression, bipolar disorder, or PTSD. And with me, I have this wave of sadness that comes, because I can't call it depression, but like, let's just say it was a wave of sadness that comes and goes. And during this period where I'm feeling extremely sad, I'd start thinking about suicide. At first it was just thoughts. It's like, oh, it would be nice to die. And then as time went on, it progressed to me having plans to say, I am gonna wake up and I'm gonna take these pills, because my mom was on blood thinners, so we had that cocktail of blood thinners. And at one point it was so vivid in my head to say, if I could take a bunch of these pills right now, I'm going to die, you know. And that's when I went to therapy for the second time, because it got so overwhelming, and I started thinking so much. Like every day for me, I would start with my routine, prepare my son to go to school, and then after that I'm left alone in the house. And now this is when the thoughts come to play. I would sit and I'd be like, if I could take this much of this pill and this much of this pill and this much, I am going to die instantly. And I had a plan, like it was a very detailed plan in my head to say, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna do this first, you know, prepare and clean. I don't want it, like, you know, I don't want it. It was the little things. It sounds silly and talking about it actually scares me, because I'm like, I don't want people to find the house messy, and then after that I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna pop these pills and I'm gonna take them, and this is gonna be the end of me. I struggled with those thoughts for a while, also because my biggest support system was gone, you know. I used to talk to my mom when life got overwhelming, and now she's not there anymore. So the grief also and the suicide ideation became best friends, and they boxed me into this very dark place where it seemed like death was the only thing that could take me out of there. It's so scary, and I still struggle with suicide ideation every once in a while, but now it's not as intense as it was before therapy, because now I think I've learned a few techniques that can pull me out of that dark spot when the need arises, but suicide ideation, especially when the plans are so vivid, it's so scary. It's so scary. I don't want to lie. And now also, every time I'm feeling suicidal, it's like, who do I reach out to? Because without the fear of feeling like I'm burdening people, because it's also like, what do you want people to do for you? Because if someone were to ask me in that moment, when I'm feeling suicidal, to say, what do you want? I don't even know, but I just want the pain that I'm going through to stop. And I wouldn't even say that I get triggered because of unemployment or like the current situation at home. Financially, we are not as well as we would love to be, but that's not the case, because I've been in settings where I had money. I've been in settings where I was working and I was still feeling the same. So I don't know if it's a matter of a void that I'm feeling in my heart and it feels like nothing can close it, but it gets intense and it gets scary the moment there's a plan, the moment you can picture yourself executing the suicide. And it's scary. I still struggle with that even to this day, to say, oh my God, what do I do in this moment? But I would love to say I'm very blessed to have people who bear with me. I have people that I can call in that moment to say, listen, I'm feeling very suicidal right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And they would ask, are you triggered? What happened? Let's talk about it. Let's see if something happened that's triggering you. And these are people who never get tired of hearing the same thing every day. And I'm very grateful for them. I'm very grateful for the people that God has placed in my life. And sometimes in these moments, I can pull myself out of that dark place without involving a third person. Sometimes I cry and I feel better. Sometimes I pray about stuff. And sometimes I reach out to someone. I find a way to distract myself, even though on other days the heaviness gets so intense that it's like, yeah, might as well get it over and done with. And then that's when sometimes I'd be thinking about my son, to say, but are you sure you're just passing down your pain to someone else? But reach out to someone. So hey, mental health is is something else. Living with mental health issues is strong. I salute people who manage to push through every day with these issues. People that never talk about them, people that just carry the weight on their shoulders by themselves in silence. And these are people who continue to show up every day and they make us laugh. And these are just very bubbly people. They are carrying rocks on their shoulders but still manage to show up. And it's scary. It's very scary to say, is there gonna be a day where I'm not able to pull myself out of the dark place? Is there gonna be, So yeah, suicide ideation is the demon that I'm currently fighting with, coupled with all the other things that are happening. But I'm glad that in all of this, the silver lining is that I went to therapy. I talked to an amazing counselor, and I also got to know a lot better about myself, outside of the suicide ideation. I got to understand, especially with the attachment style also, that it's not you being weird or creepy. There's things that happen in our lives and we pick up those habits subconsciously, and they kind of make us who we are. But the nice part is that we can also unlearn these behaviors. I can go from being fearful, avoidant, to having a secure attachment. It's just that I have to put in the work and meet my life gracefully, and we'll be fine. So management of suicide ideation is removing access to the means. I was advised also in counseling to say, Jewel, here you are, you have the pills at home that you no longer need. Why are you keeping them in the house? Try to check them out. And I did that. It wasn't an easy process. I don't want to lie, it took me 2 weeks to throw out those whole boxes of my mom's pills and flush them down the toilet. And can also seek help. Reach out to a counselor, talk to your friend, someone that you trust. Speak out, don't suffer alone in silence, or call a crisis hotline. We have South African Depression and Anxiety Group. They have a line that I will link. I'll put the details on in the description of this episode for everyone who needs them, and for therapy also. So just know that these things that we are going through, we are not the only ones who are going through them, and it gets better. It's not a linear path. It's like grief. It's not linear. There's ups and downs to it, but you have to try and be willing to put in the work, and you realize that life can be beautiful. I mean, I don't have it figured out. I still feel suicidal every once in a while, but I have tried to look past that and seek help and be willing to put in the work, and slowly we are pulling ourselves out of that dark hole. So yeah, I don't want this to be too long, because if I were to talk about mental health, I can go on and on forever. I mean, it has impacted my life in so many ways, but now we are here and now we are good. So I really hope that you also find the courage to reach out. You are not weird. You are not a burden. There's always someone that's willing to listen. Reach out for help, and let's get through this. Pull yourselves out of the dark hole. Find something that you believe in and let it be your motivation every day, and try to rise above everything. Yes, it's not easy. Yes, it's hard, and sometimes it's harder than all the other times, but find something to look forward to. No matter how little, life is worth living. It will get better. It will definitely get better. And thank you. See you on the next one.